Hey, it's Geoffrey from Ahead of the Curve. Welcome to another episode. Today, I've got my good friend Isabella Salas on the show, and she chatted about her journey and transition from a event producer into a digital artist who is creating amazing art pieces in the use of artificial intelligence. And she told some incredible stories about her journey there. So stick around and check out the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Ahead of the Curve show. I'm your host, Geoffrey Platt, and on the show today, I've got my friend Isabel Salas. Isabel, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I just want to let everybody know, just before we get started, that we have started a Patreon page and a little campaign called Be Our Hero. So I know it's tough times, but if you love the shows and you like the content that we're putting out, a little bit of support goes a long way. So please help us out if you possibly can. It'd be just wonderful to have that support. But Isabel, welcome to the show. So can you tell us a little bit about where you got started and where you are now with Jaguar Studios?
Yeah, so well, first, thank you for having me in your show.
Absolutely.
It's really exciting.
Yeah.
So I started as a producer, a content producer 20 years ago. I did film, I did TV, I did web, all this kind of crazy things that they call multimedia and multi-platform content.
So 20 years ago, right? So that was a whole friggin' different world 20 years ago.
Yeah, and then, but I'm kind of an ADD person, so it's like to understand what my creatives were talking about, I was like, ooh, what is that? Ooh, let me check this out, So I started just kind of learning things. A lot of the times, learning goes along with errors. So I did a lot of errors in that learning, but then I felt comfortable.
As we all do, like trial by fire, right?
Right. I mean, it's part of the fun too, right? So for me, it was in 2018. I was having just really large projects. So I was invited to work at the Pan American Games opening ceremony in 2015. Then I was invited to work at another Brick in the Wall opera here in Montreal with executive producer Roger Waters. Then another big project was MGM Macau. And then it was just like bigger and bigger. And I was like, whoa, I don't want to do that. So, I decided to just kind of step down, and I wanted to follow my own creative process and to know what it was. And in 2018, I started doing digital work, very much tutored by other multimedia artists. And I presented at the Dome here in Montreal. It's an immersive dome. And I wanted to do the opposite of renders. I have a background in film production, and I was producing gigantic renders. So I wanted to not have to do gigantic renders. So we broadcasted some content in there that was macro content into this gigantic dome. And that was a lot of fun. Later on, in that moment, I discovered that I had sound to color synesthesia, and that just opened a whole other world for me, kind of assuming it. I thought they were just migraines, and it turned out that no, I actually can see colors. And
that is super cool, yeah.
It's pretty revealing, I have to say.
Yeah, my wife can do that. She sees, is it dates that you see in color?
Dates. Oh, wow.
Dates, months, and numbers in colors. I keep on telling her, like, she's told me some of the colors that she sees when she sees a date. And I keep on poking at her, telling her that I'm going to change the colors of the dates just to drive her crazy.
Color coding, different color coding. Yeah, so I mean, it's a pretty interesting thing, right? Because it just changes your perception of a lot of things once you assume it. And just going around and telling people I see colors, they go like, but
she's crazy.
Just like, yeah. But once you kind of assume it, you're like, okay, this is what's happening now. What we can do with it. So I started a whole other quest into how do we see things, and started working with neurosensors and adapting kind of like very simple art and generative art specifically to biometrics.
So what did you start exploring in, if you don't mind me asking? Did you start exploring it? Did you start exploring that through software or different uses of software, or did you start exploring it through different creative methods? How did you kind of start to kind of change to that direction?
Yeah, I mean, we started. I needed to know if what I was creating, basically. So what happened is, when I discovered this, I actually had a car accident, right after my show, and then it started making me think: would this be, bad for other people? Could other people see the same? Could other people be immersed to such a point that they lose themselves, and then that can provoke other things in their brain, because it's basically, you're just feeding your brain with serotonin and dopamine, and you're like, ooh, more. So it's like antidepressants, basically. So we started working with digital health, which is what I am specializing in these days. How did it start? It was just, trying to ask people what did they see and what was their favorite moment, and kind of trying to understand perception of different people. So we started then, once we had one track of things, one track of content, then we started using neurosensors. And to our surprise, but not really, we realized that a lot of the perception has also to do a lot with cultural background. So we started just taking notes of that. And when we started taking so many notes that they didn't fit our books, we said, we need a bigger boat, and let's use AI, And we're like, oh, fun. What's AI? So
what's AI? How does it work, and how can we make it work in the ways we need
Right. And the thing was, we know AI can do all this thing, but do we really? Do we, like those memes that they come out, is like how we see it, what can really do, and what really is. It's just completely this different thing. So I decided to just start learning AI. So I went to a couple of classes here and there, and then I was like, you know what? I'm going to propose this project to Mutec. They had this Mutec AI lab going on here in Montreal.
Yeah, a lot of people, I'm sure, don't really know what Mutec is.
Okay, so Mutec is one of the largest festivals in the world for digital art and electronic music. It has different extensions. It started here in Montreal 20 years ago. And then it went to Mexico City, where I'm originally from. So it was just like perfect. It became really big. Then it was Barcelona, Argentina, San Francisco, Japan, and Arab Emirates now. So that's Mutec. I invite you all to check it out.
I remember actually working Mutec a very long time ago, kind of back in its infancy stages, when it was just in Montreal and it was like little homebrewed, and the techno scene in Montreal was going really strong. Sona was there, and Stereo had just opened, and
good
I have been doing a lot of stuff at Sona, and I ended up working for Richie Houghton when he was doing Plastic Man. He came and did that at Mutec, so that was like one of my little kind of intros and claim to fame was doing some lighting for Richie Houghton.
Right.
Super fun.
I mean, Richie, right?
I know, right?
Yeah.
So I just had that one night though, but I felt like a rock star.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing also with Montreal, right? Like, we are a small city, a thriving small city. So it seems like it's not that big, but it's actually really, it's like a trampoline. You like jump from here and it just goes like boom. So a little thing for me that was like Mutec AI lab, it was great because we were 13 artists from all over the world, and it was incredible to meet all these people like Mexican guy that lives in Berlin, and then other Berlin artists, and then another artist from Kenya, and other artists from Russia. Like, we were 5 Montrealers, and the rest were from all over the world, and I just felt so out of place and like very honored, but like I was just not at their level at all, you know. You're talking about data sets and how to change it, and like servers and GPU versus CPU, and I'm like, I have no clue what they're talking about. I work with Excel, and you know. So anyway, after, like, I learned, it was a very vertical curve of learning during this period with Mutec. It was 10 intensive days from March 1st to March 10th. And during those days, I would come home and I'd be like, I don't want to go to work. Like, how do I tell Alex that I need to take a break, you know? And then I was like, so anyway, March 11th came in to the office, and it was, you know, I felt very weird. And March 12th, pandemic was announced. Yeah. So everything closed.
Yeah, because I was up in Montreal with you. Like, just for those of you who don't know as well, as Isabel and I used to work together at Float 4. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I was actually let go. It was the third week of March, but I was in Montreal that last week of February, or February, because I saw you like a week or two before.
Yeah, exactly. Like right before that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So anyway, I just decided to okay, well, I asked for time, right? So I'm a strong believer of wish, ask, believe, receive. And I was like, well, I wished for time and I kind of asked for it. So now you cannot just believe without action. So I was like, I'm going to ask someone that really impressed me during this time to give me Skype classes. So for the month of April, Moises, his name is Moises Orta Valenzuela, who was one of the artists during this lab. He lives in Berlin, and he basically taught me pretty much all I know. And it was really fun because he was also, you know, he's a neophile, so he just like craves knowledge, and just the curve where we would enter just by his own curiosity was super interesting. And then we started, like, he would give me certain things like code and teach me how to code. At the same time, I started another class with people from AI Lab.
Absolutely, Keith.
Sorry, I cannot type on the comments.
Oh, you don't have to worry about typing the comments, but we'll pop them up.
Cool. So
yeah, you can just answer them verbally.
But you're right, kid. We all asked for that time, right? We were all craving for it. So yeah, so during this lab, I was just like, okay, I need to learn to code. Like, I'm really bad at just paying attention, and I'm dyslexic. You know, it's like dyslexic and computing is like the worst thing that can happen. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try it. So I met these people, incredible people, that work for a nonprofit organization called AI for People.
AI for People?
Yes, and I urge you all to check their stuff out. They're beautiful human beings. They're talking about AI and ethics. They're trying to make a world with AI, you know, that's fair for everyone, and that it's useful for humans, not just corporations. So they give classes every other time, and it's donation based. So I started taking classes with them in the month of May, I believe. I learned to code. And from there, we just took it to another level, Moises and I, and we then I could jam with him, you know?
So did you start was it Python?
I started with Python. Well, I started with Java, and then I was like, yeah, no, we don't want Java. And then I totally understood why Python, Christy, thank you. I really, really love that, we can give some hope. And definitely there's a lot of hope to just learn. And I mean, what can we do when we don't do anything, right? When everything is closed, you can always learn.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I mean, right now is a great time. I've been tooting it for like the last 3 months. Learn, 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 learn. So many things you can do right now, and things that these great companies that are offering their hearts and souls right now to all of these training programs and everything and content.
I mean, that was unbelievable. It's like coming because after the lockdown, at some point, all my family's in Mexico, so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go lock myself in Mexico City.
You have your family in Mexico City, and I have my family in Canada.
Oh, there you go. So I decided to go and live with Dad again. No comments. For 4 months. I think for both of us was difficult to live, after 18 years separated again together and kind of going back into this thing. But he would come in and I would look very much like my son. It's like, what are you doing? I'm in my computer. What do you want? Dinner? No. Okay.
Leave me alone.
Yeah, basically. So after like Moises and I started jamming, him in Berlin, me in Mexico City, literally I would spend my nights just like going crazy, right? And like really wanting to learn all those things. And it's really not that difficult. You just need your computer and internet connection.
Yeah,
And just imagine what you want to do, and anything is possible, basically, which is the fun part. I love data. I love researchers. I love visual research is my favorite thing in the world. If I could, I would just work on that and not get paid all my life. Like, it's the most fun thing in the world for me. But then I was like, ooh, visual research and gathering data, and now I know how to do this thing. What do I want it to be my purpose? So I decided I wanted to help health, as I had already in mind. I started seeing that people here in Canada, especially elders, needed a lot of help. And I started thinking, how could we help them with AI? So through this system that I wanted to create, I started just talking about a prototype that I want to build to help people with dementia and Alzheimer's. And yeah, so that's a project that's in development right now. Like, that will be another program in the future.
Another arm, another branch.
Another thing that we're gonna do. But what was really interesting is that I discovered purpose. Where with my other career, I was having a really hard time finding it. And with that purpose, I started looking for data sets with environmental weight. It's like, what are we doing with all this data that we already have? I don't want to show that we're going to die in 3 days with the oxygen that we are burning, because that's a lot of the environmentalists, like the urgency of this. And I'm like, I just want to show beauty of what we have, So I started doing pieces. I'm going to try to show you with my screen. I started doing pieces with data sets with the ocean. And the ocean, let me see, how do I do this? Share screen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it might end up covering up the your video feed for a minute, but it's still there. So
okay, I just share audio. I don't know how. Chrome tab. Here we go. So there we go.
All right, perfect, and we'll pop that up.
So this image, it's made with 2,680 images of different reefs around the world that are endangered species. so then I trained the model with the different kind of life and adapted my digital art to it. This is another one.
It's absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. What were you using to create those imageries, and what neural network platforms were you using? Were you using something like TensorFlow?
No, I was using Runway, and
Runway ML.
Yeah, Runway ML by Google, and then I was also using Colab. So Colab is a platform by Google as well that is just basically coding, and there's a lot of GitHub repositories that you can use to create your own code. And then now with Moises, he has taught me also how to get my precise seeds and kind of like, pick the ones that I want instead of just letting the machine go crazy.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how do you control some of the outputs from the neural networks and from the learning and the training of the neural networks?
Right. So first I started training everything, just letting the computer kind of go and saying, this is the new thing called AI. And then I started saying, yeah, no, I don't really understand why the computer is not seeing the obvious things, like the beauty of the colors that we have underwater, or the beauty of like specific shapes of coral or orchids that I use in my data sets. So what I started doing was just picking literally seed by seed. So let's say I do 1,000 steps. The steps are my seeds. And then in those steps, I go and I pick, 757, and I separate it. And it's literally manual labor. So a couple of weeks ago, it was very interesting. I had this chat with some people, with Chris Latter, actually, Concordia University professor in, we were doing this lab in Italy, in Bolzano. And he said, well, but isn't this enslaving you again? And I said, yeah, but it's like, you cannot say that to a crochet artist, It's like, yes, you're right, but it's part of it, it's like
it's part of the process, right?
Absolutely. And because nobody's doing it, I'm really enjoying it. So I started using different data sets, as I said, with purpose. Among those also are, I wanted to make a mythology tale using, mythos, basically, with Latin America. So Moises was working in a collection of artifacts from the Aztec culture. And then we said, ooh, maybe we should start something, where we can talk about different cultures around the world in this way. So we started collecting masks because it's obviously the easiest thing to think about right now. It's like,
of course, the world is wearing masks.
Right. It's like the world is wearing masks, but I was in Mexico City and I actually never realized how important masks are in Mexican culture. So since the Aztecs, we would wear masks. Mayans would wear masks, and mostly priests, to become this deity that make them, into having a bigger power. So we started working with masks, and we realized very, very quickly that we are not the only ones, obviously, using this. So this is from a piece that we started doing, Moises and I, some weeks ago. This is from his project called Transfigurations. And
yeah, I posted. I think I grabbed a shot of this from Mutec.
Right. Well, it was the Bolzano festival that.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's called Transart, and
Transart,
Moises was presenting there. So during the lockdown, I I was invited to go to Italy and present my work as a new artist, and then back to reality, like, what are we doing? We're just staying locked in. So, but it was really fun to just be able to share stage with him, to actually be recognized in my own style with him. I thought it was very generous as well. And yeah, so we started doing that, and other artists are now calling also to be kind of cultural ambassadors and do it for their own cultures. So this is going to be a series that's going to happen.
That's really, really cool. I think that's really great for the communities as well.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of touches on the histories of them and touches a lot on the history of those cultures.
For me, what's really important is what we call inclusivity, right? What does inclusivity mean? Like, really? And coming from like very different and diverse backgrounds, that doesn't mean anything unless we put it in action.
Yeah.
Like, you can pick an artist and say we are inclusive, but if you don't include all the others, it's very hard. Or invite them to create together. So that was part of that, and that's where we are right now. I'm also trying to just learn more, and my goal right now is to work with data sets that have not been created. So it's a little
So
bit.
are you planning on creating your own data sets or compiling your own data sets?
Well, I'm trying to work with ancient knowledge, because talking about all this, we realize that if we don't bring this ancient knowledge to the new era, it's just going to get lost because the algorithm will never learn it.
Yeah.
So I'm working right now on a project I call 30th Century Poems. It's a mapping installation, micro mapping installation, creating the book of books.
So explain to me what a macro mapping installation is.
Micro. So a micro mapping.
So itty
bitty. Yeah, so we're going to be doing mapping on a book or different books. And basically the data sets will have some of the most ancient codex or the most lost languages around the world. So Aramaic, some parts of Hebrew, Persian, Mayan, and then they will start all mixing together into one piece.
That's very cool. As Keith just mentioned, art from data is very cool.
It's so cool, and we have so much of it, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, there's just so much data. I remember watching a TED Talk not too long ago. I forgot the gentleman's name, but it was a great TED Talk about the use of all this data and how much data is available that you don't even know of, that you can publicly get access to, and you can create some just incredible things from it. Some absolutely beautiful, stunning art pieces created from these data sets.
Yeah.
That you'd never even think of.
I mean, I was telling about my work to somebody a couple of days ago, and he said, yeah, I mean, I see your work and it's very related to environmentalism and conservationism. And he's like, have you tried photogrammetry?
Photogrammetry?
Yeah, data sets. And I was like, whoa, that exists? And he's like, yeah, there's a lot. And I'm like, whoa. Like, it's so amazing, to go under the sea and you have this photogrammetry of everything already.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot.
It's going to get even crazier. I mean, Apple announced the new iPhones that are coming out are all going to have LiDAR. They have LiDAR sensors in them now.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just going to be volumetric craziness. It's going to be like, I think photogrammetry is a great way, I'd say kind of now an older way of being able to capture things volumetrically. Now you're going to be able to do it all in real time, and it's going to be absolutely insane. It's going to be
I mean, for me, it's just like, where's all this data going? like who has this data? And at some point is like the ownership of it. How are we managing this, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the wild, wild west again with data, because Keith was mentioning real-time data, and real-time data is definitely a huge thing. We're seeing real-time data sources everywhere from everything. You could compile it from everywhere. Hell, you could run algorithms on these Ahead of the Curve episodes and probably pull some crazy data sets out of them alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, data sets of color. So this is part of like, the long-term project is like, I want to take data sets of real-time biometrics. This is how I want to create digital health. And, any sensors that we're using these days is the actual future,
Yeah.
Like, you can create data sets with temperature, you can create data sets with heartbeat, oxygenation. Like anybody holding an Apple Watch or a Fitbit can do that. It's unbelievable.
I've got mine on right here. See? My Fitbit.
Oh, there you go. You're ready. It's actually redefining the reality into like an enhanced project, and we talk about big brands, but there's so many brands that are so ahead of us that we don't even hear about them. In Israel, they're creating.
Very true. There's a lot of companies that I've been introduced over the last several years, that work in the military sectors, in the military industry, and it's incredible the technology that comes out of military that we're using today. I mean, actually, LiDAR is a great example because that was developed as a military-based technology before it became commercial. So it's, yeah. I couldn't agree with you anymore about those technologies. I mean, and stuff that gets put into the medical fields, like you were talking about, that these sensors and these different types of devices and things that, get utilized and created for the medical industries, again, that we are not aware of, and that kind of fall back into some of the stuff that we do, and being able to use those in an artistic fashion, or being able to use those to be able to calibrate our displays or whatever,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yay, Christy, let's do this. Yeah, no, I mean, the possibilities are absolutely infinite, when you start. So I'm working in projects right now that are geared for science, tech, well-being, and definite social responsibility. I think we have a lot to do there. And I think, the AI component of it, it's interesting, but what really makes it interesting is to have this purpose. Like we cannot use technology just for using technology. Of
course not. I mean, that's the worst thing you can ever do.
Right.
Technology is developed and evolves out of a use case, out of a reason we need to use it.
And it goes away in 3 months. Right? In 3 months, we have something new. So the idea is to gear all these technologies to help different sectors and to make them multimodal as well. So we can use them for different projects and for different care and for different art as well. So what makes me really excited too is this mix of art and health that we keep thinking, it's like, wishy-washy, but not really. It goes very much into our brains, and our brains are controlling our health and our stress and, all our biometrics that we don't necessarily feel.
Yeah, it's so true. Actually, I had a good friend, Brett Ferris. I don't know if he's watching today or not, but he's helped promote the show a lot. He's a art curator for a digital art festival, that I've been part of for quite a while. And, Brett's background as well has been working in medical industries and creating VR, to help people within the medical industries. And, it's amazing to see that. And it's really cool to see the transitions of people like yourself and Brett, for example, that have a very broad kind of artistic background, but are looking to, advance things inside the medical fields and help, within that industry, which is really neat.
Yeah, I mean, I think medical fields are really in need, specifically right now, you know. My father's a doctor and he has asthma. So being in Mexico City with him and seeing just like that, you could take the oxygenation of that guy with a Vivo Smart. Vivo Smart is like a Fitbit that, you know, has sensors for that. And then I'm like, why are you going so close to that person? Just make them wear that, and then you connect that to an interface, and you can see everyone's oxygenation from afar. And he's like, why has nobody done that? Like, right. So, yeah, definitely, you know, the ideas are infinite, and keeping ahead of the curve is basically just pushing yourself up and just
Yeah, it's putting yourself up and being out there and putting yourself in front, you know, like staying on top of things and pushing yourself forward.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, Christy was saying Brett was part of a Harvard program for medical, and it's been very, very passionate about the next steps within that industry. I want to also touch upon like some of the data sets, and what are you using as data sets, out of curiosity?
Well, I am focusing in cultural heritage right now. So
Yeah.
the data sets that I am using are not created. We're starting from scratch. So if you go to Kaggle, for those that are not familiar with Kaggle, Kaggle is one of the biggest data set banks that exist. If you go to Kaggle and you type Persian, you have one data set and 3 researchers. And then you go and type Mayan and it's 0 results. So we have to really start from scratch and like scrapping, you know, text and scrapping images, literally from like museums and internet, free databases basically. And
so it's kind of like scrapbooking.
It's a little bit like scrap, as I said,
data scrapbooking.
it's like the technological crochet. You just go like piece by piece. But someone has to do it, I think. I don't know why. I just felt really compelled to do it myself. So I'm using data sets from the Mayans. I'm using data sets from the Book of Kings. It's called. It's a book in Hebrew. I'm using data sets from the Bible. I'm using data sets from all the reefs around the world that are. Are you utilizing? Yes, I do. I definitely use text for data sets. I'm working also with this beautiful studio that they gave me a space to work with. It's called Book Art and Anteism Books here in Montreal. And they have been helping me with those texts and creating book art with those. So my next exhibit actually are those manuscripts that I have been collecting into a mapping on an art book.
That's really, really cool. Yeah, Keith was just saying weighing words to numeric values.
Right. I mean, numeric or colors or.
Well, colors are great because you can get so much information out of colors alone.
Right, but so I work a lot with sound because that's my synesthesia, right? So anything can be sound for me. So, you know, measuring the type of intonation in a word or text, like how many letters, and then combine that into binary code. Like, what does it mean? The possibilities are just infinite. And it really depends. And again, what do you want to do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to ask you, like, what have been some of your what have been some of your bigger, I guess, personal like challenges and feats transitioning from being a producer like basically several months ago into, pretty much like creating full-fledged art and then using AI?
I would say to not go back to the same. We all kind of at some point sabotage ourselves somehow. And
it's all up here.
It's really all up there, like I started in April and I was like, okay, this is going to be fun for a couple of months while things pass, and then things are not passing. Let's just keep having fun. and then, and then, in May, I was like, you know what? I'm already into it. I'll apply for another lab, and this lab was in Russia. And I don't have the reflex yet to say I'm an artist. Like the first thing I go is like I'm a creative producer and artist. And I think that's the biggest trick, you got to believe it. You got to like absorb it and assume it and to say I'm this now.
Yeah, so and I guess also, there's a piece of the confidence there, and being confident, of course, in yourself and what you're doing and what you're passionate about.
Right. I mean, I have very, I wouldn't say strict, but very passionate parents. And yeah, let's keep having fun. That's the only thing that matters at this point, Yeah, I mean, I have very passionate parents, but very type A personality. One is a lawyer, one's a doctor, and I'm an artist. Like, I can't just go saying that at my family, So, yeah, I mean, when I moved to Montreal, and this might be the biggest thing that you can do for someone, is when I moved to Montreal, I was like, ooh, I'm going to be a filmmaker. And my parents are like lawyer and doctor. And am I going back to Mexico City at some point? And you ask yourself all these questions. And then my dad just went to me and said one day, you know what? It doesn't matter where you are. And it doesn't matter what you want to be. Like, you'll be great just because anything you do, you're so passionate and you're just going to do it okay. So I have never really thought of like, I never had that afterthought of like, ooh, am I doing it right or am I doing it wrong? I have had a lot of people tell me that's not how we do it. But I was like, but I am not doing anything that you are doing. So,
yeah, the other thing too is like, how do you clearly define what's right and what's wrong?
But especially in this time, like, just do what you want. This is, if you ever want to do something, this is the moment, right?
This is the time to transition.
This is the time.
This is the time to definitely dive into your passions, or figure out what those passions might be and follow those. I've always been a kind of guy where I've always played the follow your gut. Like,
right.
I've done some really stupid things throughout my life, just like a lot of people.
Well, we all have, right? Yeah,
but I've learned all along the way, and I've always kind of followed my passions and stuck to it. Stuck to my guns and said, okay, this feels right. This is good. I like the direction this is going in, and continue pushing forward. And when somebody throws you a punch, get yourself back up off the ground and continue following your passion. You might change directions a little bit, but you'll still get to where you want to go.
Right. I really like this quote from Kundera that says something like this. It says, I'm going to find it and read it. It says, anyone whose goals is something higher must expect someday to suffer vertigo. And what is vertigo? Is it the fear of falling? No. Vertigo is something other than fear of falling. It is a voice of that emptiness below us, which tempts us and lures us. And it is the desire to fall, against which, terrified, we tend to defend ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the only way. Just defeat that fear and just jump.
Yeah. Feet first.
Well, we can also have 7 lives, so just do it.
Well, Isabel, I think that's a great way to actually close out our conversation. I just wanted to thank you so much for being a guest on the show. I want to thank all the viewers as well for your support time and time again. Absolutely. So Isabel, for those, Isabella, for those that want to reach out to you, I'm assuming this is a good place to start.
Yeah,
Email.
Definitely email. I'm also on Instagram for people that want to share things. I'm very open to collaboration. If anybody wants to, send things around, we can try to figure something out. That has really how the work has been growing. Just, understanding different minds and collaborating.
Oh my God, collaboration right now is so important.
It is so important.
So important.
And you can get really far with collaboration. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Isabel, thank you so much. Next week for you guys, we have Corey Fitzgerald coming back on. We're going to kind of dive back into the XR virtual production pipelines a little bit more and talk about producing some of the events within virtual production and extended reality. So that would be super cool. Also, as I mentioned, we started our Patreon campaign called Be Our Hero. I know times are a little tough, but if you guys have any way to support us a little bit financially, we definitely appreciate it. Try to keep things kind of running on our weekly schedules. But I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate, of course, all the guests and yourself, Isabella, for joining me today. And as I say to you guys every single week, kind of stay at it and stay ahead of the curve. Thank you, everybody.
Ciao. Thank you, everyone.